Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. So, welcome once again to our session on public health and HIV/AIDS. Uh, so, till our last session, till yesterday, we have done a number of topics covering the entire gambit of the concept of AIDS, the mode of transmission of HIV/AIDS, how it actually spread, what are the various theories related to AIDS. And yesterday we were talking about the issues related to HIV in terms of taking care of the individuals who are infected with HIV/AIDS. We also talked about the various places where the care is given in terms of the dispensaries or the daycare centers, in terms of the home care, in terms of hospitals, and also the hospice care. And we've also seen how each of them contribute to the well-being of the patient. Then we have also briefly seen uh, various issues related to the testing, okay, and the counseling of patients from suffering from HIV/AIDS. Now, we are going to continue with the same thing that we discussed yesterday. And this time we will be talking about the ethical issues which are related to patients suffering from HIV/AIDS. Various issues that we say in terms of protection of the fundamental rights of such persons, in terms of the discrimination that is made on patients suffering from HIV/AIDS, in terms of ethics of legislation about HIV/AIDS, then also about developing the drug policy, the kind of drugs that need to be given to the patients, their effectiveness and other aspects. Then we would also be looking at the ethics and the HIV vulnerable population, our attitude towards a vulnerable population who are prone to contracting HIV/AIDS. Okay. And finally, we will see how individuals can live positively once they are diagnosed with having HIV/AIDS. Now, basically, ethics in the context of HIV/AIDS, it deals with the basic attitude that both the persons who are affected from HIV/AIDS and the general public in a society, they should be having in order to promote the quality of human life. Okay. Now, even when it is disrupted by this pandemic, that is, even when the quality of life is disrupted by the uh, transmission of HIV/AIDS. Basically, this would help you to develop the ethical and the moral guidelines that should respect and love, enable everyone to deal with HIV/AIDS and its survivors with dignity. Also, there's also this understanding that the basic respect and love which any human being deserves while protecting the lives of the general population from getting infected. And in this way, it will enable everyone to promote a better quality of life, even in the midst of this pandemic. Okay. Now, the first issue which comes across is talking about the fundamental rights of persons living with HIV/AIDS to care and treatment. Now, we all know that there are certain rights which are inherent to us as a member of the society or being born as a part of the human experience. Now, I'm sure that your country must be having this set of right, maybe in the constitution, or the government must have drawn upon the basic rights of the individuals. Okay. Such rights were also called upon by United Nations, who talked about the fundamental rights or the human rights, the fundamental human rights that need to be seen of living a life of dignity, that every individual has a right to live with dignity. And it's not just living, but it's living with dignity. What is meant by living with dignity? Anybody?
Hello.
Yes, Chipirero, you want to add?
Yes, dignity is like respecting the client, despite their background, the way they look. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good. So basically, living a life of dignity means living a life with respect. Okay. So it means that you are uh, not looked down upon or discriminated by the society for any reason. And this is why people who are affected by HIV/AIDS, they also have this basic right of living with dignity. So this ethics, it should promote the care and treatment of persons affected by HIV/AIDS. It should guarantee strong action to protect the individuals against discriminatory treatment or any form of persecution or ill treatment. And in this way, protect as well as promote the inherent dignity of every individual, or especially the individuals who are suffering from HIV/AIDS. Okay. The second is basically another meaning which can be attributed is how we can enhance the quality of human life. Okay, this means that it should enable everyone, both the infected and the non-infected population, to live positively with this pandemic. The quality of life, it should be enhanced in a way we deal with HIV/AIDS. Now, see, there is always a conflict between the public health and the fundamental rights of an individual, okay? And which is seen, as a classic example of conflict between utility versus liberty. Okay, so there seems to be boundaries of the ethical constraints within which we have to operate in the developing this ethics. On the one hand, you find that there are affected individuals, okay, and the possibility of discrimination in the form of loss of employment or loss of residence, even the risk of public shunning, that is very clear. That is very, very possible. At times, what happens, there is also a possibility of psychological distress which may happen for these individuals, which may be acute enough to lead to suicide. So these are certain concerns which are definitely there when we talk about individuals suffering from AIDS. And on the other hand, there is a concern for pay public safety also. Okay, so the public also have the right to be protected against getting infected. So in this conflict, one has to strike a balance between protecting the public health and also protecting the infected individuals. So any one-sided approach or a divisive approach that sets the fundamental rights of individuals in opposition to public health, okay, that should be definitely not considered. Now there are questions, which are related to this. Like if you're given a choice to visit a hospital where there are HIV/AIDS patients, will you visit them or will you avoid visiting them? Okay, there are certain questions that, as an individuals, we have to ask ourselves. Okay, said that if we are convinced that HIV/AIDS patients contracted the disease through their immoral activities, like as I said that in many societies, especially in the traditional societies, these are considered to be not a part of the social norms. Okay, so they are not. It's not considered normal to go for a profession like prostitution. It is not normal for an individual to go for multiple partners. Although it is not something which is not there in every society, people have different social and cultural beliefs. So there you will find certain communities where they allow polygamy, or having one partner at the same time. And in some societies, they do not allow polygamy. They allow only monogamy, which means that an individual can have only one partner at one point of time. So there is no, you cannot draw any kind of a judgment whether staying with a single partner is ethical or not staying with a single partner is unethical. There cannot be a judgment in this, it is all very culture specific. Then there are questions of, that people may argue for compulsory testing of the whole population to prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS. Okay, there may be people who will argue for making prostitution a criminal offense because commercial sex workers are definitely, they belong to a higher risk population. So definitely there will be people who have always argued for making prostitution a criminal offense. Then uh, HIV spreads through needle sharing among the drug addicts. Therefore, there may be people who might even argue that the drug addicts must be jailed immediately, or they should be, punished for their acts. And since it's a fatal infection, since HIV is a fatal infection, it's a good idea to publicize the names of the people who test positive for HIV so that others can avoid them. There are people who even say this, that okay, that this confidentiality should not be followed at all. The principle of confidentiality should not be followed, and the persons who have contracted HIV/AIDS, their name should be made public so that the people can keep distance from them. So there are so many people who would favor such an argument. Then there are others who may say that okay, HIV positive people, they should not be allowed to work with others, because they might infect them. Okay, others may say that since there is no hope for life, maybe we can go for mercy killing. In many countries, there is this concept of mercy killing. Who is there anybody who can tell me what exactly is mercy killing? Anybody? Okay. What happens? There is a very, you can say that there's a debate which goes on in the medical community, which says that basically any individual who is in a vegetative state, that is they are in such a situation where their daily life or their daily chores are difficult to be done by them. Maybe they are suffering from some partial paralysis, or they are in coma, where we don't know exactly when that person is going to come out of the coma. In that situation where the person is in such a situation, he or she must be given a fatal injection so that they can you know, be killed, because there are very slim chances of them getting better or their chances getting improved. So many people, they have come out with this, that okay, people who are actually, suffer from this, they must be given this kind of maybe consider this particular aspect also. And then there is also another debate, which says that homosexuality and other things, they must be totally banned from the society, because this is again something which is immoral, which is unethical, and this also contributes to the spread of HIV/AIDS. So there are so many debates which are going on around the world in different cultures, depending upon the culture scenario. But the question is, are these debates contributing to protecting the fundamental rights of individuals in the context of HIV/AIDS? Just because a person has contracted HIV/AIDS doesn't mean that he or she has been showing some immoral behavior, or that he or she must be given some kind of, a lethal injection, or he or she must be, totally ostracized from the community, or, all these things. That is definitely not the solution for HIV/AIDS, because we have to understand that there is this entire debate on protecting the basic human rights, which says that not only every individual who is born as a human has the right to live, but they also have the right to live a life which is dignified. Okay, that is, their existence is respected, their existence is valued, irrespective of whatever medical conditions they may be having or they may be going through, their existence is definitely something which is respected by others around him or her, or by the society at large. Okay, so we find that these kind of prejudices, they exist everywhere. Now, again, when it comes to fundamental rights uh, of the medical fraternity, you know, like for example, another thing comes up is many a times we see that these patients, they are devoid, or you can say that they are basically refused to be admitted in the hospitals, in normal hospitals. Why? Because the healthcare professionals and the other paramedical staff, they are quite reluctant because of the fear that they might contract the disease. So there is a lot of prejudice, not only in the mind of the normal population, but also even the medical fraternity. So there are again two ethical questions that are raised here. First is that do healthcare professionals have a duty to treat patients with HIV/AIDS? Okay, and second, do people affected by HIV/AIDS have a right to have access to care and treatment? So, what is your say on that? Do the healthcare professionals have a duty to treat patients with HIV/AIDS? Anybody who would like to speak on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Anas. What is your
Yes,
take?
because people with HIV and AIDS have the same right to health and care, respectful treatment as any other persons in a society. That's why, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Anas, thank you so much. So, basically, if you know that when an individual comes out of the medical profession, when he or she is given that degree, they are actually made to take an oath where they have to take an oath where they cannot discriminate against patients on the basis of whatever differences they may be having, irrespective of whether they belong to different race, different creed, different ethnic background, different, whatever background they are having, whatever age, whatever medical condition they are suffering from. The Code of Medical Ethics clearly states that a doctor cannot discriminate against patients. Okay? So, any surgeon, for example, who operates on patients with intestinal obstruction, they cannot refuse to operate on patients just because of his or her HIV status. So, doctors, they have a moral duty to treat all patients, including the patients with HIV/AIDS. And this comes from their professional ethics that obliges a medical practitioner to treat all patients that they are competent to help. Okay, so this way it means that the doctors, it is their moral responsibility to treat all patients, including the patients with HIV/AIDS. So they cannot say to such patients that just because you have a positive HIV status, we are definitely not going to treat you. No, of course they cannot say this. They have to admit the patient, but more often than not, we see that specifically in hospitals which are run by the privately or by individuals, private individuals, we have seen that the staff generally refuse to let in the patient suffering from HIV/AIDS. But we have already seen that there are a number of um, uh, you know directives or the protocol that has been given by the international bodies as well as by the national bodies in several countries. And they clearly spell out what are the precautions or what are the measures the medical practitioners as well as the paramedical practitioners, they have to take when they are treating patients suffering from HIV/AIDS. Okay, so we have already seen what care you have to take when you are dealing with patients suffering from HIV/AIDS, and especially those healthcare professionals who are dealing with invasive instruments or have to provide some invasive treatment to the patients, then what are the do's and the don'ts they have to keep in mind. Okay, so once they follow these instructions very strictly, then as far as the infection is concerned, they have nothing to worry about. Okay, so despite the fact that medical professionals they deal with such individuals on a daily basis, if they are uh, following the instructions that has been given on how to treat or what the precautions you're supposed to take in for HIV patients, that they have nothing to worry about. Okay. Now, there's another thing that we must understand, that people with HIV/AIDS, they have the same right to health care and respectful treatment as any other person. So we know that every individual has a right to stay healthy. If in case there is some problem, some bodily problem with them, then they can definitely seek professional help or medical help. It guarantees there are the fundamental right of the individuals, okay, or that also guarantees a right to life as a fundamental rights. So HIV/AIDS, of course, is no way it is excluded from this right. So that is why we say that every individual, despite of his or her HIV status, have the right to be treated, to be admitted to hospitals where they would be taken care of, they would be given proper treatment, okay, they would be given proper care and other facilities would be provided to them. So that is why we say that you cannot refuse an individual suffering from AIDS from giving any kind of a medical service. Okay. Now the second issue that comes up is basically the issue is the futility of discrimination against people living with HIV/AIDS. Now, we often see that people who are suffering from HIV/AIDS are generally quite discriminated against. And we have seen how the kind of you can say that the people have some kind of misconceptions regarding the disease and how it is spread, and that is why they tend to discriminate against individuals who suffer from HIV/AIDS. And this discrimination may come out in so many forms, like they may be denied the basic right to health. Okay, they may be disrespected by their community, by their society. They may be ostracized. People may just not interact with them, sit with them. They may be even asked to go away from their family, or go away from leave their work wherever they are working. So all these discrimination, even the children who are suffering from HIV/AIDS, they are being discriminated when it comes to education. Normally, the educational institutions or the schools, they refuse to admit these students, okay, and give them uh, education. So all these are the discriminations that we see that the person suffering from HIV/AIDS they have to go through. Uh, Now, there are again various types of three possible types of discriminations have been listed, which can be, all the discriminations that are targeted to this HIV. They can be basically listed in three under three types. First is against the high risk group. So, what do you mean by discrimination against high risk groups? Anybody? What is meant by discrimination against the high risk groups? Discrimination against the high risk group means that the groups which are in having the highest possibility of contracting HIV are also the groups which have to undergo uh, the most targeted discrimination by the society. For example, discrimination is definitely done when we talk about um the commercial sex workers, or talk about the homosexuals, or say children who are suffering from AIDS, you know. So these are actually high risk groups, and we find that there are a lot of discriminations that are done against these high risk groups. That there are discriminations against HIV positive people. So not only it's a high risk group, but also individuals who suffer from HIV, who have been tested positive in the ELISA and the Western blot test. There is a clear discrimination against such people. And we see that how they are made to at times leave their families, leave their place of stay, their residence, leave their job, okay, and how they are generally ostracized, or many times, this communicated. So all these things, they generally happen with once a person comes out to be having a positive HIV status. And it is definitely against people living with HIV/AIDS. That is, those people who have been contracted with HIV/AIDS for quite some time now. They have adjusted to the fact that they are suffering from HIV/AIDS, and they have now started living their life with things like with the treatment, with the facilities, with the health facilities that they are being given. But generally, we generally say that this any kind of social discrimination against persons who have been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, who are living with HIV/AIDS, that is totally unjustifiable. Okay. Now, another thing that comes up is what can we do to combat such discriminations? Can anybody suggest some certain steps which can be taken to combat discriminations? Anybody? Just think over it. How can you combat the discrimination against HIV people, HIV positive persons? How can you do that? Okay. So, there are some suggestions that can be given for combating HIV AIDS related discrimination. This may include, first of all, making changes in the area of human rights legislation and enforcement. This means that the laws that are related to the this whole gamut of human rights and their enforcement, that is the way they are enforced in the society, the way that the individuals are expected to follow these laws, there have to be certain changes in this area. Okay, we need to create a more supportive environment for persons living with HIV/AIDS, as well as the groups which are most affected by the disease. Then another suggestion would be to strengthen the anti-discrimination laws. What does this mean, strengthening anti-discrimination laws? Anybody? Anybody on this? How can you strengthen anti-discrimination laws?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Anas?
I think it's like to give the people who are. I'm sorry, ma. I don't know how to say it.
Okay, Candero, you want to say something? Yes, Candero.
Yes, madam.
How?
I just wanna go a little on combating discrimination against HIV/AIDS.
Uh-huh.
Um, this it requires some education and the awareness
Uh-huh.
to promote accurate information about HIV/AIDS to dispel myth and reduce stigma.
Okay.
And that education should be aimed at both the general public and healthcare providers.
Okay. Uh,
Yes, madam.
yes. Thank you. Thank you, Candido. So basically, these suggestions they definitely include this one aspect of strengthening the anti-discrimination laws. So one thing is if these laws they exist in the country, they need to be strengthened and made sure that the government's responsible. They should make sure that they are actually followed by the individuals, okay, and not just that they are there for the sake of it. And second, if there are no anti-discrimination laws in a particular country, then it becomes the responsibility of the government as well as the civil society to come up with such anti-discrimination laws which promotes, stopping discrimination against persons. And for that, we need to create a more supportive environment for persons who are living with HIV/AIDS, as well as for the groups who are most affected by the disease. So it's not just educating them, but also creating a more supportive environment for them. Another suggestion could be expanding the legal services. What do you mean by legal services? Expanding legal services. What is meant by expanding legal services? Legal services means providing legal aid to individuals whose rights have been violated. So usually what happens that most of the times the legal services which are provided to people, either they are out of their reach because financially it is very difficult to hire a lawyer and then you know uh, come up with a case in the court of law. It takes a lot of money, and most of the people they just don't have the enough resources, especially those individuals who are suffering from HIV/AIDS. They lack such resources to take these facilities. So it becomes the duty of the government that they need to expand the legal services, provide at least a free or even at least subsidize legal services to such individuals, and make sure that they are able to present their case before the court of law. So in case of any kind of discrimination that they are facing, or in case if they have uh, uh, their right has been violated, then they should be able to do what? Put the case before the court of law. And for that, it is important that they should be properly represented. So that is why expanding the legal services, providing them with legal help and support is very important. Okay. Also, we need to come up with educating the healthcare providers. As we have already seen that the healthcare providers play the most pivotal role in uh, not only improving the life cycle of these individuals, improving their longevity, but also in helping in, you can say, avoiding the spread of this disease. So definitely the healthcare providers, they need to be educated on this particular aspect. Okay. So proactive responses need to be taken. And what are these proactive responses? These are those responses that seek to identify the causes of discrimination and to deal with these before any kind of conflict arises. So these are very important when dealing with HIV and react and this must be promoted, whereas any kind of a reactive response. Reactive response means that those responses that depend upon those who are discriminated against seeking redress after the event. Got it? Proactive and reactive. Proactive means that you have to take measures before the problem comes up. Okay, so you're proactively helping, identifying the cause of discrimination and deal with them, before any kind of discrimination is made. So that is taking a proactive response. On the other hand, reactive responses are basically uh, responses that depend upon those who are discriminated against. So, or those who are already discriminated, they will come up with these reactive responses and they seek to redress their grievances after the grievances have actually happened. Okay, so the responses should be more proactive rather than reactive. As we say, no, ki prevention is better than cure. That is why the proactive response should be more something that they should be looking at rather than looking at the reactive responses. So all of these proactive responses include what? They include legislative responses. Okay, that means coming up with legislations, providing legal services, all these things. These are legislative responses. Second is advocacy. Advocacy means basically championing for the cause of the human rights and also for the uh, expanding legal services. All these things are related to advocacy and public declarations by influential individuals or groups. Okay. Now, also educational responses can also be considered to be a proactive response. Now, the next part related to ethics, relate to ethics of legislation about HIV/AIDS. Now, one of the responses of HIV/AIDS has been an epidemic of laws and policies enacted by many countries all over the world. Now, these laws which relate to public health and civil liability for HIV transmission, discrimination, homosexual behavior, sex workers and their clients, employment, injectable drug use, therapeutic and preventive goods, the media, the broadcasting, censorship, privacy, all these are some of the legislative responses that have been related to the laws related to HIV/AIDS. Now, in May 1991, the World Health Organization, they listed around 583 laws and regulations concerning the HIV infections and AIDS enacted by different countries. So, as early as 1991, the WHO was able to come up with or identify with the legislations which are related to HIV/AIDS in different countries, but their effectiveness, it has to be evaluated. Okay, like one of the legal experts has put it like this, that put it as a judicial outburst. While it may have solved some problems, it has caused the appearance of a new virus. Okay, that is known as that new virus has been called as a hull, or highly useless laws. What do you mean by highly useless laws? It means that many of the legal or the policy responses related to HIV/AIDS are quite useless, and they are often harmful and at times found to be counterproductive. Okay, so instead of being based on an understanding of the medical issues, medical research and its findings, they are driven more by the fear and the resulting public demand for action. Okay. Now, what happens that legislation in this matter, it should be able to assist in strategies for the care and treatment of people with HIV and help reduce the spread of HIV. The approach of the law in responding to AIDS, it should encourage the cooperation, confidence, and trust of those infected and at risk by protecting their dignity and integrity. Okay, so many a times we find that most of the laws which are in place, they are highly useless laws. That means that they are highly ineffective. They're instead of based on the understanding of medical issues, they are generally driven more by the fear, and that is why they lose their validity, they lose their effectiveness. Okay, so this thing that needs to be changed. And there are mainly three models with which the law can be incorporated into the HIV/AIDS policy. The first is that the traditional proscriptive model that penalizes certain forms of conduct. Now, what is a traditional proscriptive model that penalizes the certain forms of conduct? Can anybody tell me what do you mean by this? A proscriptive model that penalizes certain forms of conduct. What do you mean by this? Proscriptive model means that sometimes there are certain penal sanctions, you know, which are given to such patients or to groups who are at a risk. A large number of countries, they have adopted this provision for compulsory reporting of HIV/AIDS, and they also provide penal sanctions for knowingly spreading HIV. And there are established procedures for mandatory testing for HIV or enacting other proscriptive laws directed specifically at HIV/AIDS. So these laws are basically coercive in nature, and instead of encouraging a healthy conduct, they have actually resulted in alienating those people who are at risk of HIV and making it less likely that they will cooperate in prevention measures. So what happens when the reporting becomes compulsory, and it becomes mandatory, there comes a mandatory testing for HIV AIDS, and we find that generally people, they hide the situation. Okay, they will hide their situation till the time they can, and by the time we know that they are suffering from HIV AIDS, they might even have infected so many people. So that is why what happens, that a coercive law like this is definitely not going to do any good for anybody. It is important that the lawmakers, they must be sensitive not only to the direct but also to the indirect impact of legal sanctions. Okay, the laws will rarely be an appropriate policy response if they seek merely to target the conduct of people with HIV or activities that give rise to HIV infection risk. So we need to have more positive laws, okay, which talks about more positive involvement of these individuals with HIV/AIDS rather than talking about more coercive laws or penal sanctions, okay, which means that this would alienate the people who are suffering from HIV/AIDS or who are at a greater risk of getting that disease. Now, the second model that we come across in terms of this law, apart from prescriptive model, is known as the protective model. Now, this model focuses upon how the law can protect people from discrimination, breaches of confidentiality, and other harmful and undesirable occurrences. Of course, we know that people who suffer from HIV, they have to undergo a lot of discrimination, and at times their HIV status may even be, made public, you know, and all these are actually quite counterproductive for any kind of checks on HIV. So the protective model has been at a central importance in the context of the legal response to HIV/AIDS because of the proliferation of discrimination against people with HIV and their increasing recognition, both nationally and internationally, of the interplay between AIDS and human rights. So now we know that there is a strong relation between HIV/AIDS and human rights violation. So such protective model has become very important, where the state tries to do what? It tries to protect the protect the what? Protect the rights of the individuals. Okay? So this not only enlists the support and cooperation of the people at the risk of HIV in prevention strategies. Okay, and so this way the protective model is playing a very big role in checking the spread of HIV/AIDS, or at least in looking into the welfare and well-being of the patients suffering from HIV/AIDS. Okay, so after the protective model, the next comes the proactive model. Now, what is a proactive model? It is basically a very important model which operates on a broader and far more reaching level. That is, it suggests that the law can play a proactive role not merely in mediating rights and obligations as between individuals, but also in seeking to change underlying values and patterns of social interaction that creates vulnerability to the threat of HIV infection. That means that you have to act before the harm is done. So you take such precautions so that the spread does not happen in the first place. You come up with measures so that people who are at risk, at greater risk of contracting HIV AIDS, they can be protected. So all these things, they have to be taken into consideration, and this forms what is known as the proactive model. So this is more of a preventive measures that you have to follow. So the challenge for HIV policy is to recognize the need to address not only what is known as HIV/AIDS specific issues like HIV education programs and research into new barrier methods to prevent HIV transmission, but also the underlying social and economic factors that deprive individuals of the power to protect themselves against HIV infection. Okay, got it? So these are these issues which are related to HIV education program. These are related to underlying social and economic factors that deprive individuals of the power to protect themselves against HIV infection. Okay. Now, this law can also be used as an instrument to provoke or reinforce the required changes. Okay. These interventions will require a more creative approach to the law, which recognizes that the law can play more than just a direct prescriptive of protective role. Okay, so with such an approach, there is definitely a real potential to use the law proactively and constructively in response to HIV/AIDS. So these are the three kinds of laws that can come up, that the governments can come up with, are generally into existence. But the most effective of them is definitely the proactive model and the protective model. And the third model, that is known as the prescriptive model, this tends to be more coercive, and as such, it is not very much considered to be uh, successful in combating the spread of HIV/AIDS. Now, there is again a question whether we need to consider the criminalization of HIV transmission. That means, what does it mean? What do you mean by criminalization of HIV transmission? Can anybody tell me? Anybody? What do you mean by this? Criminalization of HIV transmission. This means that criminal law is sometimes used to deal with the behavior of persons living with HIV/AIDS who put others at risk of contracting HIV. Okay, and this is one of the most debated topics where the persons, okay, who engage in any high risk behavior when they are knowing that he or she has been infected with the human immunodeficiency virus is certainly committing a criminal offense. Now, what happened that uh, at times what happens is that at times an individual, despite knowing the HIV positive status, they continue to show the same kind of high risk behavior. Okay, like maybe if a commercial sex worker who has been diagnosed with HIV, he or she may still continue to provide the services to the clients, irrespective of the fact that they have been diagnosed with HIV virus. So this is definitely a kind of a criminal offense. Okay, but many a times it does happen that the individual who is engaging into this criminal offense, into this risk behavior, they might not know that they have been contracted with HIV AIDS. Okay, so so the route of contagion, they are usually used as a norm to demarcate the HIV/AIDS population into two categories. So one is known as the guilty majority and the innocent minority. So you find that there is this majority who have contracted HIV, and then there is this innocent minority who are not actually directly responsible for the spread, but they are actually they are the victims. For example, spouses of men who have contracted HIV by using the services of commercial sex workers. Now, what has the wife done in order to, uh, you know, uh, for in that, what is her role? Of course, she is definitely a victim in this, because generally women, they do not have much say when it comes to sexual behavior, when it comes to reproduction and other aspects of their life, everyday life. Okay, now gay men, injecting drug users, promiscuous men and women, they are supposed to belong to the to this category of what is known as a guilty majority. Okay, and other patients like who are suffering from transfusion cases, and the spouses of such men, they are considered to be in the second category, that is in the innocent minority. But there is definitely one thing that we need to understand, that in attempting to criminalize certain behavior by people infected with HIV, the criminal justice system at times it tends to ignore the conclusions of the public health officials. Okay, like the strategy of some prosecutors of charging people with serious crimes for committing certain acts while knowing that they are infected, it discourages people from learning their HIV status. Yes, Candido, you have something to ask or say?
Yes, madam.
Yes, Candido, tell me.
Yeah, I want to ask on the criminalization. You have talked about the, I mean, HIV criminalization. There are some other couples I have seen in my life that they are
Uh-huh.
engaged, like married, where a man, a woman is positive. Is
Okay.
he or she a criminal or not?
See, this is again, I said it's a very debatable topic, and we have to look into the other aspects of this behavior shown by that individual. But the crux of the problem is that when we criminalize, in many countries, in many such societies, there are such legislations which tend to criminalize such people. But we need to understand that when we are doing this, we are discouraging people from learning their HIV status and seeking diagnosis and treatment. Okay, so it will depend from basically from person to person, from one situation to another situation, whether their actions can tantamount to being criminal offenses. Okay, now by attempting to charge people with serious crimes for actions that cannot transmit virus, the criminal justice system is definitely undermining efforts to educate people about the real risk of transmission. Now, there is a real risk that the judges are going to punish people not because that they have committed dangerous acts, but because they are homosexuals or they are commercial sex workers or drug users. See, we have also seen in many times that this entire thing of drug abuse, of alcoholism, these are nowadays considered as kind of a disease, okay, where the individuals they do not have any kind of control over their what? Over their behavior. And even for commercial sex workers, we cannot, totally blame them for everything that happens. Why? Why we cannot do that? Why we cannot do that? Because even these commercial sex workers, they are also a kind of victim. Victim of human trafficking, victim of being forced into prostitution. Usually, individuals will not enter into commercial sex trade until and unless they have been forced into it. Tell me, is it true or not?
It's true, ma.
It is true, right? So they themselves are victim. So we cannot actually tell them that they have done something wrong or they are criminal in that sense. Why? Because most of the women, especially, when they are we will find majority, in fact 99.9% of women who are actually into commercial sex trade have been forced into this kind of a profession. Either they were trafficked as minor girls or they were trafficked, and they were forced into this kind of a work. They have not adopted this profession out of their willingness. It's very rare that you will find a person getting into commercial sex work, okay, on willingly getting into this commercial sex work. So these are also, victim in a sense. They are also survivors. I will not say victim, but they are also survivor of certain uh, crime done on them, done against them, committed against them. So public health laws, of course, will be better suited than criminal law to deal with those individuals who, knowing that they are infected, engage in behavior likely to transmit HIV without using precautions and without previously informing their partners about their HIV status. So in many countries, there is criminalization that would depend from country to country and from culture to culture. In some countries, they have started using public health laws instead of the criminal laws to deal with such individuals. Okay. Many also argue that the traditional criminal laws are ill-suited to the context, like they seem to be ineffective and inappropriate in dealing with conducts likely to transmit HIV. So, unlike traditional penal laws, statutes made in many countries regarding HIV, they do not require proof of either harm, causation, or the state of mind. It is sufficiency that the accused who is engaged in this kind of a behavior or the persons who commit a criminal offense, if knowing that they are HIV infected, they engage in sexual intercourse or other activities that could potentially transmit HIV without previously informing their partners about their positive HIV status. Okay, so thus we say that the criminal law, it serves only a limited purpose, and that is why the public health laws instead of criminal laws, they must be used to deal with persons who have been engaging into this kind of a behavior. Okay. Now, another aspect which can be discussed is the concept of ethics and the HIV vulnerable population. That is how we consider such population who are more prone or who are vulnerable for the transmission of HIV. So we have seen some of the vulnerable population in our previous sessions, and we were talking about these population. In this, the most important or the most vulnerable are the drug addicts and drug addicts. Okay, we have already seen that how use of intra uh, venous syringes, okay, that can spread the infection of HIV from an infected person to a healthy person because of the contaminated needles that are used to inject the drugs. Okay. Now this generally till now, till until the outbreak of HIV/AIDS, drug addiction was considered in general as a law and order problem. It was considered as a crime. Now the advent of the AIDS pandemic that has changed this concept, and now it is being considered a public health concern. Okay. Now, in this, a sensible strategy would be to, in dealing with drug addiction, would be to aim at harm minimization rather than total legal prohibition. So, again, our concern would be how can we uh, go into minimizing the harmful effects of drug addiction rather than totally considering it as a legal problem, a legal menace, or you can say that banning this, because we know that in the long run, this such kind of laws are not going to work very well, especially with drug addicts, because we know that drug addiction is a disease rather than an addiction per se. You know, it has been considered to be a disease where the person who is taking up drugs loses all the inability to work properly or with proper body functioning without taking those drugs. So if you have worked closely with such individuals who are addicted to drugs, or if you have seen anybody in your surrounding who was addicted to drugs, you will see that they are completely helpless if they do not take drugs for some time, and they become totally dependent on them. Their body function, their brain, everything, it becomes totally dependent on such drugs. And if they do not get the drugs, then they may show some really, really withdrawal symptoms, very severe withdrawal symptoms, as is seen in the case of alcoholics. You know that there are some withdrawal symptoms, right? Do you know about it? What are withdrawal symptoms? Anybody? What are withdrawal symptoms? Why are you people so quiet today and no activity from your side? Just one or two people are giving answers. Michael, you haven't said much today. What is the matter with you? Yes, Candiro.
Yeah, withdrawal symptoms are like physical and psychological symptoms that occur when a person stops using substance such as drugs and alcohol.
Yes, good. Thank you, Candiro. Thank you so much. Excuse me. So we find that persons who have been suffering from drug addiction or substance abuse, they at times face very severe withdrawal symptoms if they do not take drug for some time. And that is why their body it becomes dependent, totally dependent on these drugs. So it is kind of a disease, we can say, rather than a law and order problem. Because nowadays it has been proved that their work efficiency, their body efficiency, it is totally, totally, you can say it decreased. And that is why uh, people, once they become habituated, it becomes very difficult for them to leave taking drugs. Okay. Now, what happens is that the existing drug laws in many countries it negatively affect efforts to prevent HIV infection. Okay, and these laws and policies it make it difficult to reach and educate them. Why? Because drugs is usually treated as a criminal activity rather than a health issue. They create a culture of marginalized people, driving them away from any kind of, traditional social support networks. So once, you start criminalizing a person who is, using a drug, then you tend to drive away them from the traditional social support networks. Okay, they foster a reluctance to educate about the safe drug use practices or encouraging the use of illegal drugs. So all these laws that are generally seen in most of the countries, we find that they are not very effective in addressing this issue. Another thing is that they foster public attitudes that are vehemently anti-drug user. So public, they start becoming against the drug user rather than the habit. And they create a climate in which it is difficult to persuade people to care about what happens to their fellow citizens who use drugs. So they start seeing them with contempt, they start looking at them with contempt and with also a lot of discrimination, and in that case, and in such a scenario, the individual is totally not able to come out of the habit. Okay. Now, their focus is, of course, too much attention on punishing people who use drugs while downplaying the critically important issues such as why people use drugs and what can be done to help stop this practice of using unsafe drugs. Okay. Now, the drug users, rather than being offered easy access to treatment for their drug use and HIV, they are generally, being driven underground. So they are totally outcast. They are totally, driven away from the society, from the normal people. Why? Because of the attitude that these laws they have developed over the period of time. Now, excuse me. Another aspect is our attitude towards the homosexuals. Now we know that homosexuals are also a lot that are uh, highly, you can say, prone to contracting HIV/AIDS. Now, the fact is that the effect of human immunodeficiency virus is the same, irrespective of the route it enters the human body. Okay, so we may have different moral or ethical convictions regarding different sexual orientations. Some society may consider only heterosexuality, others may accept homosexuality. Like, for example, in many countries, they have accepted the homosexuality as well as the same-sex marriages. Okay, so many Western countries, so many countries in Europe, in many states in US, Australia, all these countries, they have accepted the existence of such relationships and they have even legalized their existence. But for more traditional societies, like even in India, for example, acceptance towards homosexuality has not been that much. Okay, like although earlier it was supposed to be a crime, to engage in such behavior, in such sexual orientations. Nowadays, the government, although the government has done away with this clause where they have criminalized it. I mean, they do not consider it as a crime per se, but as far as promoting homosexual marriages, that is definitely not there. In fact, I guess I think today or yesterday this was in the news that the court have altogether they have altogether rejected this plea of making homosexual sexuality legal or their agreeing to the homosexual marriages. So that was recently in the news in the papers. Now, what is the status in your particular country? Anybody can tell me? Like, I think I need all of you to answer how it is being treated in your country. Is it acceptable? Is it legal, or it is still considered with the as a criminal behavior? I want all of you to answer one by
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
Yes,
Here
Anas,
in
what
our
is it?
country, in Nigeria, is illegal. Anybody was catch in such kind of a case will be sentenced to jail for 15 to 20 years.
Okay,
Thank you,
okay.
ma'am.
Thank you, Anas. Thank you so much. Chipiliro, yes, what is the status in your country?
Actually, here in Malawi, the issue is still in the hands of the parliament.
Okay. So you do not have a clear-cut law as such, right till now.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yes, Michael, what about you? What is the status in your country?
I'm living in the very same position as Chibiro Zimba has already directed or put in place because I'm a Malawian also, so the response will quite be the very same as already directed or be given by Chibiro. Each and
Okay.
everything in the hands of the parliament so far. So we are just waiting for the parliament to undergo their discussions and find out what will be the very final solutions from them. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Who else is there? Anas, you can tell me. Anybody else? What is the status in your country?
Roma,
Yes, Pelerani, you want to speak? You want to say?
yeah, I'm also from Malawi as Mariko and Sibirio. Yes, it's
Uh-huh.
in the hands of government and also in the hands of court because there's a case at court
Okay.
where two men was caught in the act, different men, but they combined the case for same hearing. So when the court
Okay. Okay,
judge
thank you so much. Thank you so much. So basically, we can conclude that though the status is not very clear in most countries, but this kind of discrimination is definitely seen. And till now, till very recently, homosexuality is still considered to be an offense in many countries worldwide. Though there have been now changes coming up all over the world, you have more and more people standing up for their rights, especially the third gender, the gay population, and especially the United Nations. They have a very, very, a clear stand where they totally support the existence as well as the rights of the LGBTQ population. LGBTQ population is basically it's a short form for lesbian, okay, gay, then bisexuals, transsexuals, and queer identities. Okay, queer means it's still not clear, basically, they what they are. So all these individuals who belong to these or any of the other categories, they have certain rights which must be identified by the member countries, and this is a clear cut message of the United Nations. So, in many countries, though they have been given certain constitutional, you know, rights, they have been considered. These acts have been criminalized, but we still see that the attitude of the people has not changed by and large. They are still considered with a lot of disrespect and discriminated upon, and also um, in many countries, it still continues to be a criminal offense. Now, another is this attitude towards the prostituted women and men, or who we call as the commercial sex workers. Now, usually, in many countries, we find that prostitution is illegal, and they not only that it they are at a risk of contracting HIV, but also they suffer from several diverse occupational hazards. Okay, like for example, they are prone to develop sexually transmitted diseases. They are prone to all kind of physical and sexual violences from their clients. Okay, they also suffer from several psychological disorders, several kinds of substance abuse and alcoholism. Most important thing is that we should understand that they are real people and that they also suffer from difficulties that normal people face. So there need to be some kind of empathy that we need to develop towards them, okay, and help to decriminalize sex work. Now, there are several countries in the world which have made commercial sex work as legal. They have given it a professional status. For example, countries like Netherlands, they have legalized the status of uh, these commercial sex workers. And just a minute. Okay, sorry. So, so there are countries which have legalized the status of sex workers, and in fact, they have started considering it as a profession. They have given certain kinds of rights as well as other responsibilities to these population, and in this sense, we say that to some extent, their standard of living, their quality of life, their enjoyment of rights has increased in these countries. Okay. And this is still a far cry in several societies, including India. And I'm sure even in countries in South Africa, in other parts of Africa, where prostitution by and large still continues to be a criminal offense. Is it true? Is it a criminal offense in your country? What is the status of prostitution in your country? Anybody would like to say? Chipiliro?
Uh, as here in Malawi,
Uh-huh.
it's like a job. So if someone want to be a prostitute, she can
Uh-huh.
be with the
Okay.
support from the government. They say we should respect the their rights, and
Okay.
as the government as one way of uh, protecting the prostitutes from getting HIV and AIDS, they provide uh, uh, mechanisms like condoms that can
Mm-hmm.
help prostitutes from contracting HIV or spread the HIV if they have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chipiliro. So that's really good to hear that countries are responding in a very positive manner. But we find that in many countries, in many parts of the world, the um, the condition of women who are into prostitution, it is deteriorating and it still continues to be very pathetic. And as I've already said, that most of these women, they themselves are victims of certain, atrocities and crime against humanity. For example, the what is known as a human trafficking. Many of the girls that are forced into prostitution, or even boys who are forced into prostitution, they have been trafficked, okay, and they are actually forced into this profession irrespective of their liking. So basically, many of them, they are made to actually, depend on several kinds of drug abuse. Okay, they are made. Uh, okay, are you guys uh, into Hollywood movies? Do you watch Hollywood movies?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen that movie
Yes,
Taken? Anybody who have you seen that movie Taken? I think it's got two or three parts. Two parts definitely. Now this Taken movie, if you have not seen, then I highly suggest that you see that movie. This gives a very, very a realistic, um, picture of how this entire, this work of human trafficking it is carried out. How this crime is conducted, how the people they are taken by these gangs, okay, which are there everywhere, how the especially the women they are taken away from their families, or maybe they are even at times they are also forcibly or on some pretext they are taken, and then they are kept in very inhuman conditions. They are injected drugs, into their bodies, and then when they become they are into this when they become habitual to this drugs, they are made to join this prostitution. And there are several countries in the world where this prostitution menace is exist, and there are certain other parts of the world where there is a lot of demand for such trafficked individuals, okay, for various work. Many of the times the trafficked girls and boys, they are thrown into prostitution, and the other times they are thrown into some other kind of bonded labor. So this is basically what happens with these human trafficked individuals. So I think if you are comfortable watching Hollywood movies, and you should definitely see this movie, so you will understand the entire nexus, how this process of international human trafficking is carried out. And even in countries, in several countries, it is a major problem. Even in countries like India, we find that the girls, they are trafficked from various provinces within India as well as from outside India. For example, they bring girls from the surrounding countries of Nepal, from Bangladesh, Myanmar, and other some countries on the pretext of giving them work, or promising them to marry them. So all these women, they are then, or even the girls, they are trafficked into the country, and then they are sold to these brothels where where they are made to undergo a certain very inhuman treatment until the time that they break, and then they accept prostitution as a way of life. They have to stay in that inhuman conditions, and even after they accept prostitution as a profession, they have to actually suffer from so many professional hazards. We have already discussed about it. Okay. Now, next is this issue of women and HIV/AIDS. How many of you think that actually women are more prone to HIV/AIDS as compared to the male counterparts?
Come again.
How many of you think that women are more prone or susceptible to contracting HIV/AIDS? Anybody? Anybody can tell me, are women more susceptible to HIV/AIDS?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Thank you, Michael. Actually,
Yeah,
women are, yes, Michael, you want to say something?
yes, I think these women are standing on the position that they can get HIV and AIDS more than men
Uh-huh.
because they can't make an informed decision on their own. So when they have
Yes.
proposed to have sex with somebody else, the decision of wearing a
Uh-huh.
condom, the decision of using a condom or
Uh-huh.
whatsoever within the period of sex, the
Okay.
rest are in the hands of men. So a lot of men discourage themselves or rather refuse to use condoms most of the times. And it's men who
Uh-huh.
produces money to the women. So women, because they need to get money from men, so they indulge themselves in the
Excuse me.
negative use of sex, whereby they can contaminate HIV and AIDS easily than men because they can control themselves easily. Again,
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for your inputs. Yes, certainly women are more prone to for contracting HIV/AIDS. As we've already discussed that women, they do not have control or over their bodies, over their reproduction, over sexual activities. Generally, they do not have a say. They are not allowed to take informed decisions relating to all these aspects of life. So, not only they are susceptible to AIDS, but one very important issue that is related with women and HIV/AIDS is the status of the unborn child. You know, Because if a man is diagnosed with AIDS, there is just one individual who's diagnosed with AIDS. But if there is a woman, and that too a woman who is pregnant, then we find that there are two individuals whose life is at stake because of being contracted with HIV/AIDS. So that is why we say that the issue, it becomes so vital when we are talking about the position of women, their right to act to in the sexual activities, involvement in sexual activities, their right for on on reproduction, and their right related to control over their own body. Now, the last aspect in this part is, what do you understand by living positively with HIV/AIDS? Now, we know that once a person is diagnosed with AIDS, that means that he or she is diagnosed with AIDS for life, because we know that there is no cure that has been found for AIDS. AIDS has no cure. There are no vaccines which are available in the market which can prevent the uh, HIV/AIDS, the spread of HIV/AIDS. The only thing that we have is that we have the knowledge on the modes of transmission, and we have the knowledge on how or what are the preventive measures that can be taken in order to prevent the uh, transmission of AIDS. And the third aspect is, there are certain antiretroviral viral drugs or therapies that are available in the market that can help the patient in prolonging his or her life for some certain amount of years. So basically, having a positive attitude towards life in case with respect to HIV/AIDS means that we know and we accept that these individuals are infected. Okay, so the patient knows and they have this kind of acceptance that, okay, they are infected. They have the knowing and understanding the facts about HIV/AIDS. So once they are infected, they know about it, they know about the facts, and this would help them to prevent getting into behaviors which may be harmful for other individuals. Okay, then individuals also, they take steps to protect others from their infection. So once they know that they are infected, they will take steps to prevent infection spreading to other individuals. Then they are also have to take care not to expose themselves to further HIV infections or other infections. So basically, how to live a healthy lifestyle, how to have, how to get proper food, how to get proper nutrition, how to take proper medications, taking these medications so that they are able to improve their health, taking special care of their physical health and treating symptoms of ill health as soon as possible. So, as soon as any symptoms come up in the vicinity, they are able to get the symptoms treated. Also, having access to emotional support. So, emotional term support in terms of you know maybe counseling services, emotional support from the family and from the uh, uh, society, from the community, they in continued participation in social life, irrespective of the fact that they may be positively with a positive status of HIV, they need to have a continued participation in social life. Okay, because we know that AIDS is not transmitted by shaking somebody's hand, or like speaking to them, or all these things. So definitely AIDS does not it does not transmit through this. So their continued participation in social life is important, because this would help them to get a more emotional support from their fellow beings. Okay. And also, most important is learning to cope with stressful situations. So, as we've already said, that they need to get into this proper mode where they are practicing exercises, they are practicing some, uh, you know, things like meditations and other things that may help them to reduce the stress related to this disease. So this is, of course, mindfulness, practicing mindfulness. All these things are important, and this create a kind of a positive impact towards, or we can say this is kind of living their life with a positive, in a positive manner. Okay. Now, this is all about AIDS, the various things, or we can say that various issues, ethical issues related to different aspects of AIDS. Now, in the last part of the block, we would be talking about the life skills in the context of adolescent health. Now, what do you understand by life skills? What are life skills? What are life skills? Anybody can tell me what are life skills? Have you heard about the term?
Yes, madam.
Yes, Candido.
Yeah, these are a set of abilities and knowledge that are essential for individuals to navigate the various aspects of life successfully.
Okay, thank you. Right. Basically, life skills is necessary for every individual. Okay. Uh, in order to live their life in a more positive, in a more holistic manner, and also to basically not only normally, but also specifically for individuals who are suffering HIV/AIDS. These life skills are very much important. Okay. Now, basically, it is these are skills which are there to for prevention of undesirable behaviors, and they delay any kind of uh, uh, any kind of you can say that high risk behavior among individuals. Now, this is important that such information should reach the youth because of their vulnerability and their age and the generally the wrong messages that are often portrayed by the media. So we often see that nowadays the younger generation, especially the school goers or the college goers, they are very much under the influence of the internet. Lot of information is available very easily, and at times they are also more exposed to a lot of things at a very early age. So in this sense, what happens sometimes in case of if they are not having these life skill education, then what happens that sometimes uh, they may kind of be compelled to indulge in high risk behaviors. Okay, because of these media exposures, sometimes there can also be due to the peer pressure. So definitely there is a need to teach these life skills to youth where they can uh, avoid getting into high risk behaviors, and living their life in a more healthy and a more successful manner. Okay. Now there are basically two types of life skills. One, you can say, one is what is known as the inherent life skills, and the other one is known as the acquired life skills. Now, what are inherent life skills and what are the acquired life skills? Now, mostly the skills with the are inherent in an individual, okay, when they are born, okay, that these are known as the inherent skills of an individual. And the other skills which are acquired are generally those skills that a person gets through education, training, and practice. Okay, so inherent skills are the skills that a person is present in a person by birth. For example, respect for elders, obedience to parents, concern for siblings and immediate relatives. All these are what? These are inherent life skills. Okay. Now, the inherent life skills, they mold the person and enable one to face the challenges which life sometimes offer as well as helps them to adjust to the situations, to changing situations of their lives. That is why inherent life skills are very important. Now, the acquired life skills, on the other hand, are those that are taught to a person or which have been imbibed from others over a period of time. Okay, for example, these principles like, non-judgmental attitude towards their fellow beings, or a controlled emotional involvement with clients. Like generally as a social worker, you are taught these basic attitudes or these basic principles. So these are the acquired life skills. Okay, and now these acquired life skills are further broken down into two life skills, two types of life skills. One is the formal and the other one is the informal. So the formal acquired life skills are the ones that a person has learned from proper training or a grooming school. For example, the communication skills that persons have, working as a part of team. These are all the formal acquired life skills. So on the other hand, the informal acquired life skills are those that a person has acquired through various stages of life and from constant contact with other persons. Okay, for example, ability to organize any occasion, any party, seminar, or get together. uh, all these things are what? These are informal acquired life skills. So these are the two types of life skills, inherent and acquired. And acquired are again divided into formal and informal life skills. Now, for life skills to be effective, it's important that uh, it is taught in a participatory environment and also include generic skills, such as communication or ability to listen, being able to empathize with people. Now, generally, people, we see that they have a more preconceived mindset about various issues. Sometimes we tend to become, very judgmental about individuals. We tend to have certain preconceived mindset about individuals, which can be, for example, our attitude related to sex and sexuality. Okay, many societies consider these as taboo subjects. Then sometimes, most of the times, we find that when we discuss topics, they often come embarrassment, uh, uh, to the teachers as well as the students who are taught. So the introduction of the terminology life skills is an attempt to reduce the embarrassment which is caused, you know, and it should be understood that life skills is a method of increasing awareness through interaction among the people. Okay, and it should be complemented by the national policy of a country. It should be incorporated by the health services, and it should also have a community participation as well as support from the general media. So these life skills education, they need to have a more participatory environment, whether they are supported not only by the government but also by the community, by the media, by the services or the departments, all these together, they should make an attempt to uh, develop an environment of teaching these life skills to individuals. Okay. Now, what exactly we understand is a life skill education. Now, how do we define life skills? We have given a more regular connotation, but exactly what life skill education is all about. Now, see, there is no precise definition for life skills. Okay, there you cannot say that there is one precise definition, but several agencies they have tried to define life skills, and WHO defined life skill education as a design to facilitate the practice and reinformation of psychosocial skills in a culturally and developmentally appropriate way. It contributes to the promotion of personal and social development, the promotion of health and social problems, and the protection of human rights. Okay, so the WHO has given quite an elaborate definition of life skills education, where they have linked it with the, uh, as facilitating the practice and reinformation of psychosocial skills. Okay, which is culturally and developmentally appropriate. It also contributes to the promotion of personal and social development. So not only the development of an individual, but also the social development, the society development of the society as a whole. Not only this, it is also related to prevention of health and social problems. Health problems, of course, we know various diseases, and social problems means, of course, various aspects like alcoholism, drug abuse, all these things are considered to be social problems. And the protection of human rights. So these are inherently important for protecting the basic rights or the fundamental rights of the individual. Now, so life skills are basically abilities for adaptive and positive behavior. So we say that they are abilities for adaptive and positive behavior, and also they are abilities to maintain the state of mental and physical well-being while interacting with others within the local culture and environment. So these are you can say, the broader definitions of life skills, whether they talk about not only uh, going for a holistic development culturally as well as individually, but also looking at, as abilities for adaptive and positive behavior and preventing all kind of health and social problems within a particular community. Okay. Now, life skills vary according to the conditions and situations of a person. For example, there are certain life skills which may be more prevalent in certain things like AIDS, okay, management of HIV, AIDS, and stress management. Like, for example, negotiation, refusal skills, okay, and they may be taught in a conflict-oriented area. Many skills can be used simultaneously in practice. Thus we say that they vary according to the conditions and situations of a person. Okay, so some skills may be more relevant in one area of life, and some skills may be more relevant in some other areas of life. Now, what is the purpose of life skills? The purpose of the life skills in the context of HIV is to improve the standard of life of the individual and in particular the young in the context of their lifestyle. So the life skills education helps in understanding one's own role with the changing societal structure and functions. So it will help you to understand what is your role within the changing societal structure and functions. Okay. Now, the life skills education also aims at a comprehensive behavior change. So, life skills will help you to adopt more positive behavior and behavior which are supportive of health and well-being of an individual rather than risky behaviors. Okay. Now, these behaviors will enable the individual to develop the skills which are needed to face a complex world. They also include communication, decision making, critical thinking, controlling emotions, resisting peer pressures, establishing relationships, etc. Now, we have seen that there are so many cases where the individuals they fall prey to drug abuse and other addictions because of peer pressures. So one important skills in this regard would be how to resist the peer pressure for getting into wrong habits. I'm sorry. They also address important issues and they spread awareness among young people and guide them towards imbibing new values. Okay, so they are not just concentrated on providing information, they also help the individual to help themselves so that a person is able to make use of all the necessary information and knowledge which is related to HIV, AIDS, and other issues of concern, where they are enabled to live a life without fear. Okay, got it? Any questions? Any questions at all? Okay, so we can move ahead. Now, there are certain categories of life skills. They include psychosocial and interpersonal skills. They are generally various categories that they have been divided into. Now, the first is the interpersonal communication skills, where a person is able to express his or her feelings and give feedback as well as receive feedback. Okay. Also, how to become a good listener. These are all interpersonal communication skills. The second type of category of life skills are the negotiation or the refusal skills. That is a skill allows a person to assert himself herself in a situation which he or she feels is not conducive for him or her. And it also enables a person to refuse a peer pressure for activities that are morally wrong or wrong for their overall well-being. So you need to have those negotiation or refusal skills as well. Okay. The third category of life skill is empathy, where an individual develops the ability to listen to the and understand the other individual's needs and behavior in a particular situation. Okay, and that individual is able to express that understanding of the situation. So this is what empathy is all about. Another set of skills is more known as advocacy skills. Now, this enables the individual to have influence on others and present the cause that one perceives as right. So, through these skills, the individual can motivate people and work towards the fight for a just cause. So, like we say that there are so many people who advocate for the rights of women, there are so many people who advocate for the rights of HIV positive people. So this is basically what advocacy is all about. Ability to influence others, okay, and present the cause that he or she feels is right. Okay. Another set of skills is what is known as the decision making or the problem solving skills. This skills it enables a person to gather vital information on important issues and evaluate the future consequences of the present action for self as well as for others. So basically, ability to take decisions in a certain situation and ability to suggest problems or to come up with problems for difficult situations. These are some of the set of skills. Another set of skills is the critical thinking skills. Now, these skills, it enables the individual to analyze a situation occurring around him or her and the factors affecting the change. So, based on this, the individual is able to take a conscious decision, okay, after understanding the situation around him. So, this is what a critical thinking skills is all about. And the last type is the coping and management skills, self-management skills. This helps to build the confidence of the individual and further develop his or her awareness regarding the rights and the values. It also enables the individual to manage his or her anger and other kind of emotions. Okay. And these skills also help the individual to manage one's own time and to reflect the ability to reflect the positive thinking. Okay. So this last set of skill is known as a coping and self-management skills. So this is how skills have been divided into various types. Now, in your book, when you see, you will find that there are a lot of sets of skills that have been given by some important international bodies. You can just go through it and in your answers, whenever you are asked to write that, you can state some of these skills, okay? How these are the different types of skills, and maybe just give a particular what you call that examples, okay, for your in order to substantiate your answers. Now, how are life skills important in the context of HIV/AIDS? Okay, why? Now, life skills education in the context of HIV/AIDS, it should be designed around the following concepts that have been given by UNESCO in the year 2001, where they state that AIDS is a problem and we have the power to do something about it. Okay? AIDS not only attack our immune system, but we should do all we can to strengthen our immune system. Okay, so basically, that's what the United Nations says on life skills, that it is now known and clear how HIV is transmitted. So, early treatment of other STDs can dramatically reduce the risk of infection with HIV. And then there are quite simple and effective ways for everyone to prevent HIV infection. Now, these are some of the things that the United Nations says on AIDS, and they say that why life skills are relevant to HIV. Now, education, life skills education is bringing about HIV prevention among the younger population, among the young people. Okay. And education agencies, they also need to keep up the life skills education as a matter of concern, and should not be hesitant to incorporate life skills education in the curriculum. So nowadays, there is a clear-cut direction that the countries worldwide, they need to come up with a proper life skill education and include them into the school curriculum so that the students are able to understand these life skills and practice them so that they can live their life more in a more healthy and a positive manner. Okay, so the need of the hour is to develop a strategy that frames the development or improvement of the life skills as an educational process. Okay. Now the understanding of life skills education has moved ahead whereby it has come to mean that nearly all skill-based educations result in the overall development of the individual. We now know that skill-based education, any kind of skill-based education, is important for the overall development of the individual. So it is not wrong to say that life skills, it stresses on the importance of risk perception. That is, it allows an individual to analyze the situation and the future consequences of his or her actions. So when individuals, they decide to have more than one partner for carrying out sexual activities, when an individual decides to visit a brothel to take the activities of a commercial sex worker, or when an individual decides to take an intravenous injection to take drugs, then it means that an individual will analyze the situation and the future consequences of his or her action based on the life skill education that he or she has gained. Okay? Because such actions, they not only pose a threat to their life but also on the life of the other individuals who are related to them. So this decision making has to be done accordingly to counter the same. Now, now the risk, it may vary from people to people. Okay, so in order to facilitate the proper use of life skills education for the prevention of HIV/AIDS, one must understand and accept individuals as they are. Okay, in the same way, we are able to tackle issues of, say, poverty or gender inequality, marginalization, unemployment. It may be easier to bring about the winds of change as the issues are more or less the root cause of problems faced by many young people worldwide. Now, the understanding of HIV/AIDS as a developmental issue has gained momentum as more and more youth are caught in its web. We know that this population is highly susceptible to HIV/AIDS because of the uh, uh, frequency in which they get into sexual behavior, and also we've already discussed that in many parts of the world the average age of indulging into sexual activities has declined to a great extent, so children in their early ages, they are also getting into showing such behaviors. So that means that this is not only a disease, but also it has become a developmental problem. Okay, it has become a developmental issue. So if we are able to infuse the youth about the need to bring about changes in the communities for the holistic development, then facilitating programs for the prevention of HIV/AIDS through life skills based education will no longer be difficult. Okay, and life skills, they should also be taught to the youth in relation to their sexual health education, and sexual health education, it cannot be separated from the life skills education. So we say that nowadays many of the countries, they have started giving sex education from the school level itself, and we say that most of these countries, including India, like even in India, sex education has become a very important part in the school. not only because of the rising menace of HIV/AIDS, but also because of another presence of another problem, which is known as the child abuse. Okay, so we see that in many countries, abuse of children, whether it's sexual abuse or mental abuse or economic abuse or even verbal abuse, many of the times children may face such abuse. So in order to cater to the problems, cater to the growing menace of these two situations, um, the government has introduced life skills education and sex education in the school curriculum, and children as early as class kindergarten, as in the kindergarten, they also have to they also learn these life skills. Like they have in our schools what we know as the education for this differentiating between a good touch and a bad touch. Now, a young child is not going to definitely understand the various, bickerings of sexual relationship. But for a person, for a child who belongs to a kindergarten, there is this entire concept of good touch vis-a-vis a bad touch. So children are made to understand what is a good touch and how they can differentiate this from a bad touch. Okay, so that means that they would be able to not only protect themselves from any kind of abuse, but also problems related to HIV transmission, also the psychosocial well-being of the children that can also be maintained. Now, another aspect in this is definitely the decision making. The decision making is one important life skill that is important in terms of HIV/AIDS. So when you are presented with a situation, you are the one who have to take a decision. Okay, so whether that decision is related to your sexuality, whether that decision is related to using intravenous drugs, or whether that decision is related to using the services of a commercial sex workers. All these are the life skills that are important. Okay, so decision making is a very important life skill that has to be taught to individuals in the context of HIV. Another life skill which is relevant to HIV is this entire skill of negotiation. How you negotiate when you're faced with an uncomfortable situation, how you are able to refuse. So when your peer group, when your friends are forcing you or pressurizing you into doing certain activity which may not be very beneficial for you in terms of your health, in terms of your well-being, how well you are able to say no to that idea, or how well you're able to refuse that idea. So these are certain negotiable skills which are very relevant. The third skill is the ability of an individual to empathize. Now, this is very important for every individual because this will bring us a feeling of empathy towards our fellow being, especially towards individuals who are who have either contracted HIV/AIDS, or who are in the high risk population, who are part of the high risk population. Another important critical life aspect in this is what is known as a critical thinking. It will basically allows an individual to analyze events and situations that take place in and around him, so that he or she is able to evaluate and uh, the influences that affect her thoughts and her actions. Okay, so these are the things that they should be able to. So critical thinking is something that is evaluating a particular situation and see how that situation is going to affect you. Okay, so this is one important aspect. Advocacy, again, I've said that is also one critical life, this thing, life skill education in context of HIV, so that you are able to stand for what is right, stand for a particular issue, spread that issue, or sensitize individuals for that issue. Then another one is what is known as the interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication could be in the form of verbal or non-verbal communication. That is the your body language. And one important skill in this regard is the coping skill and the self-management skill. How you are able to cope with a difficult life situation, how you are able to cope up with your personal emotions, and self-management skills mean being aware about himself or herself and manage your life according to your potential. So these are some of the skills which are very important when we talk about uh, AIDS, okay, or HIV/AIDS. Now, this is all for this topic today. We will meet again tomorrow and we will start with the last block, that is the fourth block. And by the end of the, since tomorrow is our last session, I would also expect you all to come up with any kind of questions or, queries that you may be having, any difficulties relating to your course. So we can discuss that in the last half an hour of our session. Okay. So thank you, everybody, once again for your cooperation and for your patience. For patiently listening and participating. And I'm definitely looking forward to have you all once again tomorrow, where we will look at the last block. So till then, be safe and take care of yourself. We'll meet again tomorrow. Okay? Thank you so much for attending this session once again.
Thank you very much, Ma, for the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you. Have a good day, all of you. Thank you.